"Grandma Mom says you don't really love us. She says you're just pretending." Those words, spoken so casually by my grandchild, stopped my entire world in its tracks. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, one hand gripping the frame so tightly I could feel my knuckles ache. My breath caught in my throat, and for a long moment, I couldn't find my voice. I thought I had grown used to disappointment. I thought my heart had learned how to bend without breaking, but hearing that soft, innocent voice repeat a lie that cut deeper than any insult, nothing had prepared me for that. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, my hands trembling as I set my cup of tea aside. My grandchild stood in front of me, small fists clutching the hem of their shirt, confusion written across that sweet, trusting face. They didn't understand the weight of the words they'd just spoken. They didn't know how those words could tear down years of memories and rewrite every moment I had cherished. I thought of the nights I'd spent sitting by their bedside, holding cool cloths to their feverish foreheads. The stories I'd read, the songs I'd hummed, the countless meals I'd made, just to see them smile. All of it seemed to vanish in that instant, replaced by a seed of doubt planted by someone else's bitter tongue. I wanted to ask who told you that, but I already knew. I'd seen the looks, heard the sharp words wrapped in sweetness that she used so easily. I'd felt the distance growing the way she'd turn them away from me with a single glance or a sigh heavy with false patience. I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my grandchild's forehead. "I love you," I said softly, my voice steady, even though my hands were still shaking. "Don't ever forget that, no matter what anyone says." But I knew, even as I said it, that love wasn't always enough to silence a lie. A lie repeated often enough can become a truth in the mind of a child. And that was the heartbreak I faced, a quiet battle I would have to fight with every gentle word, every soft smile, every small persistent act of love. When my grandchild left the kitchen, the silence felt like a wound I didn't know how to heal. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady beat of my own heart. And I asked myself, had I been too quiet for too long? Had my silence become a permission slip for someone else to steal the truth from the mouths of my own family? I had always believed that family was a place of safety, a circle of arms that held you up no matter how far you fell. But that day, hearing those words from a child who should never have had to doubt my love, I understood that not everyone sees family the same way. That morning changed everything. I knew then that I couldn't stay silent any longer. I couldn't let my love for them be twisted into something small and false. Because the truth of how fiercely I loved them, how completely I had given myself to them, was the only thing that truly mattered. And I would not let anyone steal it away. When I closed my eyes that night, I let the memories wash over me. Not because I wanted to remember, but because they demanded to be seen. I thought of all the small moments that made up a lifetime of love. The nights spent rocking a crying baby to sleep, the mornings spent humming in the kitchen as I packed lunchboxes and wiped small faces clean. I remembered the years when my hands were always busy mending clothes, folding sheets, cooking meals that filled the house with warmth and comfort. I had been the quiet engine behind the scenes, making sure the little ones had everything they needed. I had done it all with a smile, not because anyone expected it of me, but because that was how I showed love. It wasn't grand gestures or loud declarations. It was in the way I remembered every birthday, every scraped knee, every favorite bedtime story. It was in the way I woke up early to stir soup on the stove, the way I sat for hours in tiny chairs at school, recitals clapping until my palms stung. I thought about her then, my son's wife, the woman who had once called me Mom with laughter in her voice. I thought of the first time she came into my home, shy and full of bright hopes. I welcomed her with open arms, not knowing that one day she'd be the one to twist those same arms behind my back with her careless words. I had loved her as a daughter. I had tried to be a safe harbor in her storms, to offer advice when she asked, and to step back when she needed space. I had given her everything I could, my time, my patience, my unwavering faith that we were all part of the same family. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as someone on her side. She saw only the ways I didn't fit into her carefully curated world. The small ways I made her feel like less than perfect, not because I meant to, but because I was there, a mirror she didn't want to look into. so she started to erase me, word by word, story by story. She told my grandkids that I was selfish, that I was only pretending to care. She painted me as a villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. And the worst part was that they believed her, at least for a little while. But in the quiet of my new home, with the weight of my own memories pressing against me, I found something she couldn't touch. I found the knowledge that love is not something that can be measured by lies or taken away by someone else's bitterness. I remembered every kiss on a scraped knee, every song I'd sung to soothe a nightmare. I remembered how those same grandkids had run into my arms after school, their laughter bright and untainted by anyone's words. And I knew that those memories, those small, shining pieces of my love, belonged to me. They were mine, untouched by the bitterness of anyone else. No matter how many lies she told, no matter how many times she tried to twist the truth, she couldn't take those moments from me. Because the heart of a mother and a grandmother beats quietly but steadily. It holds every memory like a sacred promise. And no one, not even someone who once called me mom, could ever steal that away. The whispers started in the hallway, soft and sly, like a draft that sneaks under the door in the dead of winter. I'd walk past their rooms and hear the murmurs, small voices saying words that didn't belong to them. Words too heavy for a child's lips. She said, "You only come around because you want something," my oldest grandchild once said, his brow furrowed, with the confusion of someone too young to know the weight of a lie. She says, "You don't really care about us." I remember how I paused, my hand still on the doorknob, my breath catching in my chest. In that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to march into that other room to demand she stop poisoning their innocent hearts. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I'd learned that fighting her words head-on only made them grow stronger. She was clever that way, wrapping her cruelty in a sweet tone, twisting concern into condemnation. And the children, they didn't know any better. They trusted her because she was their mother. I stood there in the hallway, listening as they parroted her words back to me in voices that trembled with uncertainty. "Mom says you used to be different," one of them whispered. "She says you're just pretending to be nice now." How do you answer a question like that when it's asked by someone whose tiny hands you used to hold in yours? How do you explain to a child that sometimes grown-ups lie, not because they want to hurt you, but because they're trying to protect the fragile image of themselves they hold in the mirror? I knelt down so we could be eye to eye. "Do you remember the stories I used to tell you before bed?" I asked gently. "The ones about the brave knights and the dragons." He nodded slowly, his eyes wide with memory. "I remember. Those stories were real to you, weren't they?" I said, my voice soft but firm. "You believed in them because I told them with love. The things your mother says. They're stories too, but they're not the kind you have to believe." He didn't understand. Not fully. But he nodded anyway, his small shoulders relaxing a little. And in that moment, I promised myself that I would never let those whispers become his truth. The hallway became a battleground of glances and half-heard sentences. She would pass me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her arm draped casually around one child or another. I could feel her triumph in every tight-lipped smirk, every word she didn't say out loud, but wove into the spaces between us. But I refused to let her win. In the quiet moments when the children and I were alone, I held fast to the small rituals of love that had always been ours. I braided my granddaughter's hair while she told me about her day. I helped my grandson build towers of blocks, each one a testament to the steadiness of my presence in his life. I knew those moments wouldn't erase the poison she'd tried to pour into their ears. But I also knew that love has a way of leaving a mark that even the sharpest lie can't undo. So I stayed. I stayed in those hallways and those quiet corners, ready to fight for them, not with anger, but with the fierce, gentle force of my love. And I knew that one day they would see the difference between her whispers and the truth I carried in my heart. One evening, when the children were already tucked into bed and the house had fallen into that soft hush of a night nearly over, I found her in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, the clink of ceramic and the rush of water loud in the stillness. I stood in the doorway watching her with a calm I didn't know I possessed. She must have felt me there because she glanced up her eyes, meeting mine in the reflection of the dark window. What she said lightly, as if my presence was an annoyance she could brush away. I took a breath, steady and quiet. "Why are you telling them those things?" My voice was gentle, almost like I was asking her to pass the salt. But the question landed heavy between us, and I saw her shoulders stiffen. She didn't answer at first. She turned off the tap and dried her hands with deliberate care, refusing to look at me. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, her voice sweet and cold all at once. "You know," I said, my words soft but unwavering. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." She set the dish towel down with a sigh, turning to face me fully. "I'm just telling them the truth," she said. "They deserve to know who you really are." My heart clenched at her words, but I kept my face calm. "The truth," I repeated, "or the version you've created so you can feel better about yourself." Her eyes flashed a quick spark of anger. She tried to hide behind a cool smile. "You think you're so perfect?" she said, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Always so kind, so patient. But you don't fool me. I see the way you look at me, like I'm never enough for your precious family." I felt a pang in my chest, but I didn't let it show. "I've never thought you weren't enough," I said quietly. "All I ever wanted was for us to be a family. But family doesn't lie. Family doesn't turn children against the ones who love them." She looked away, her fingers drumming on the counter. For a moment, I saw something like doubt flicker across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that same tight-lipped smile. "You're old," she said softly, "and you're in the way. They don't need you like they need me." The words stung, but they didn't surprise me. I'd seen it in her eyes for months, the need to push me aside to be the only voice they heard. I realized then that she wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was trying to erase me. "I can't stop you from saying what you want," I said, my voice steady, each word careful and measured. "But I won't let your lies be the last thing they hear from me. I'll keep showing them who I am, no matter what you say." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. She stared at me, her mouth tight, but I saw at the smallest crack in her confidence. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to stand firm in the truth of who I was. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, the quiet victory of my resolve echoing in each step. She could keep telling her stories, but I knew the power of my love. And I knew that someday the children would see it too. The final straw wasn't some big argument or a moment of explosive anger. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the sun spills through the curtains and everything feels deceptively peaceful. I was sitting in the living room, mending a small tear in my grandson's jacket. My needle moved in and out of the fabric, a rhythm that had always soothed me. She came in without knocking, her footsteps light on the old floorboards. She looked at me with that same cool smile she always wore, the one that said she was in control. She sat down across from me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I think it's time you found somewhere else to be," she said softly, almost kindly. "The children don't need you around all the time. It's confusing for them." I paused, the needle poised in midair, my heart hammering in my chest. I had known this was coming. I'd seen it in her eyes for months, the way she'd look at me like I was a relic she was tired of dusting off. But hearing it said out loud was something else entirely. "I've always been here for them," I said quietly. "This is their home. My home, too." She shrugged, her smile never wavering. "Not anymore," she said. "You've done enough. It's time to let go." I looked at her, then really looked. At the careful tilt of her head, the polite tone that barely hid the steel beneath, she wanted me gone. She didn't want to share their hearts or their laughter. She wanted me to fade away so she could rewrite the story of this family without me in it. I finished the last stitch in the jacket and set it aside, my fingers tracing the neat line of thread. "I see," I said finally. My voice was calm, but inside I felt something shift. A quiet resolve, a line I wouldn't let her cross again. That night, I packed my things. I didn't take much, just a few clothes, some photographs of the children, the small tin of buttons my own grandmother had given me years ago. Each item was a piece of my history, a reminder of who I was beyond the walls of this house. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't sad, but because I'd already mourned the loss of this family long before that day. I'd spent months watching her push me out, inch by inch, until there was no place left for me at all. When I left the next morning, the children were still asleep. I stood in the doorway of their room, watching them breathe in the soft light of dawn. I whispered a promise into the quiet, "I love you. I will always love you." I hoped somehow that they'd feel those words in their dreams. I walked out of the house with my head held high, the weight of my small bag no match for the freedom I carried in my heart. She thought she'd won, that by pushing me out, she could erase me from their lives completely. But she didn't understand that love doesn't vanish just because you're not in the room to give it. She could take the house, the daily routines, the small traditions we'd built, but she couldn't take the memories. She couldn't take the laughter or the bedtime stories or the warmth of my arms around them when the world felt too big. I stepped out into the bright morning, the sun on my face, and felt a quiet strength settle in my bones. She thought she'd taken it all, but she didn't realize that what really mattered had always lived inside me, and no one could take that away. The room I found was small, barely big enough for the bed and the chair by the window, but it was mine. The first night there, I lay awake listening to the hum of the radiator, the distant sounds of traffic outside. There was no soft breathing of children down the hall, no footsteps that paused outside my door. Just me and the gentle rhythm of my own heart. I woke early the next morning, sunlight streaming in through thin curtains that fluttered in the cool breeze. I made tea in a chipped mug, the steam curling around my fingers. It was a simple ritual, but it felt like a small act of reclaiming. I was no longer a guest in someone else's life. I was the author of my own quiet days. The first week passed slowly, each hour stretching out like a blank page. I spent my days wandering the neighborhood, learning the names of the streets, and the quiet park where children played under the old trees. I found a small corner shop that sold fresh bread and warm smiles. The woman at the counter greeted me like an old friend, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. In the evenings, I sat in the chair by the window and watched the sun set in soft shades of pink and gold. I thought about the house I'd left behind, the familiar creak of the stairs, the worn wood of the kitchen table. But those memories didn't hurt like they used to. They felt like old photographs, edges softened by time. I started writing letters to the children, even though I didn't send them. In those letters, I told them about the park with its bright flowers, about the warm bread that smelled like home. I told them about the birds that gathered on the windowsill in the mornings, their song a gentle reminder that each day begins anew. I didn't write about her. I didn't write about the hurt or the quiet battles I'd fought. Those stories were mine alone, and I wasn't ready to share them. Instead, I filled the pages with love, with small details that I hoped would one day reach them, even if only in spirit. At night, I'd tuck those letters into the drawer beside my bed, a secret testament to the love that hadn't faded, no matter how far away I was. And in the quiet of those evenings, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I realized that I didn't need a house full of things to feel whole. I didn't need her approval or her permission to be part of their lives. My love for them wasn't bound by walls or by the small, spiteful lies she'd tried to plant in their hearts. It lived in the stories I carried, in the way I still set a second cup of tea on the table in the mornings, just in case they were with me in spirit. It lived in the soft hum of my favorite songs, as I cleaned the small room, in the way I folded the worn blanket at the foot of my bed, with the same care I'd once folded theirs. This room with its peeling paint and its single window was enough, because it was mine. Because in its quiet corners, I found the strength to keep going, to keep loving, even when I wasn't sure who would ever see that love. It was late in the evening when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number flashed across the screen, familiar but unexpected. My heart gave a small jolt, and for a moment, I just stared at it, the quiet room around me holding its breath. I picked up on the third ring. "Hello!" My voice was calm, though my fingers trembled slightly against the cool plastic of the phone. "Grandma?" The voice on the other end was small, hesitant. It was my eldest grandchild. My throat tightened at the sound. He hadn't called me in months, not since the day I left. I closed my eyes, holding the phone a little tighter. "I'm here," I said softly. "What's wrong, my dear?" There was a pause, a rustle of movement. Mom said, "She said you didn't really want to be around us. That you were tired of us." His words were a whisper, as if he was afraid to speak them too loud. My chest ached with every syllable. I took a deep breath. "Oh, sweetheart. That isn't true. I never stopped wanting to be there for you." My voice cracked, but I didn't hide it. "I have always loved you. Always." Another pause. "I don't understand," he said. "Mom says so many things. I don't know what's real anymore." I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the beat of my heart steady and sure. "What's real is how much I love you. How much I have always loved you. Nothing she says can change that." The line was silent for a moment, just the soft sound of his breathing. "I miss you," he said finally, his voice breaking. "I miss you reading to me. I miss your hugs. I miss you." Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I didn't let my voice shake. "I miss you too," I said, "more than you can imagine." "I don't know what to believe anymore," he whispered. "I know," I said gently. "And that's okay. You don't have to choose right now. Just remember that my love for you is yours to keep, no matter what anyone says." He sniffled, and I could almost see him in my mind's eye, curled up on his bed. His small shoulders hunched under the weight of words he never should have had to carry. Do you think maybe you could come visit sometime?" I closed my eyes and took a breath that felt like it reached to the very bottom of my soul. "I would love to, sweetheart," I said. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." The call ended with a quiet goodbye, and I sat for a long time afterward, the phone still warm in my hand. I looked around my small room, the soft glow of the lamp, the gentle clutter of my new life, and felt something shift inside me. She might have tried to turn them away from me, but the bond I had with them was built on something she could never touch. It was woven from years of bedtime stories, scraped knees I'd kissed better, and laughter that had nothing to do with her. I set the phone down and whispered a promise to the quiet room. I will always be here for them, no matter what. Because no lie, no whispered poison could ever truly sever the love that had taken root in my heart. The next time I saw them, the sun was bright and warm, and they ran to me the moment I stepped into the park. Their laughter rang out across the grass, a sound that cut through every shadow that had settled in my heart. I bent down and opened my arms, gathering them, close breathing, in the scent of their shampoo and the soft warmth of their small bodies. They looked at me with wide, searching eyes, and I saw the question there, unspoken but heavy. "Did Mom tell the truth?" their eyes asked. "Did you really stop loving us?" I smoothed back a lock of hair and looked into those innocent faces. "No," I said softly. "No matter what anyone says, my love for you has never changed. It never will." We sat on the park bench together, the sun dappling our faces through the leaves overhead. I didn't speak in anger or try to tear down the person who had tried so hard to turn them against me. That wasn't what they needed. They needed the truth spoken gently and with love. "I was there when you took your first steps," I said, my voice low and sure. "I was there to hold your hand on your first day of school. Every time you cried in the night, I was the one who rocked you back to sleep." They listened, eyes wide and mouths slightly open, as if I was telling them a fairy tale they'd never heard before. I told them about the nights I spent sewing costumes for school plays, about the way I learned the names of their favorite stuffed animals. I told them about the silly songs I used to sing, how I'd twirl them around the kitchen until we were both breathless with laughter. "I did all of that," I said softly, "because I love you, because you are part of me, and nothing anyone says can change that." They didn't speak at first. They just leaned into me, their small shoulders pressing against my sides. And in that quiet moment, I felt the bond between us, fragile but strong in the way only love can be. I knew that they were still young, that they didn't understand everything yet. But I also knew that truth has a way of shining through, even in the darkest of places. And my love for them was a light I would never let go out. When it was time to leave, they clung to me a little longer than usual, their small hands clutching my fingers like they never wanted to let go. I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." I walked home slowly, each step feeling like a promise kept. She might have tried to fill their heads with doubt, but she couldn't take away the memories I'd built with them. She couldn't erase the quiet, steady presence I'd always been in their lives. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the stars bright above the city. I thought of them, my grandchildren, and how their laughter had sounded like music that day. I knew there would still be challenges ahead. I knew there would be more words spoken behind closed doors, more doubts planted where I couldn't see. But I also knew that I had done what I needed to do. I had given them the truth. And in the end, the truth was enough to set us all free. The last time I saw them that week, they waved at me from the back seat of the car as it pulled away. Their small hands pressed to the window, their faces bright with the kind of hope that only children carry. I watched until the car turned the corner and disappeared. And then I stood there for a long time, the quiet of the empty street wrapping around me like a soft blanket. Back in my small room, I placed the flowers they'd picked for me in a jar by the window. Their bright colors seemed to chase away the last of the shadows, and I found myself smiling. Not because everything was perfect, but because I knew that the most important part of me was still safe, the love I held for them, unbreakable and mine alone. I spent the rest of the evening in the warm glow of that small room, each corner, a testament to the life I'd reclaimed. I cooked a simple dinner, humming softly to myself, and set an extra plate at the table. I knew they weren't there, but the gesture felt right, a quiet promise that there was still a place for them here, no matter how far away they were. Later, I sat by the window, the city lights twinkling in the darkness beyond. I thought of everything I'd survived, the whispered lies, the small betrayals, the nights spent, wondering if love alone was enough. And I realized that it had been. It was. Because in the end, love isn't measured by who stays or who tries to rewrite your story. It's measured by what you carry with you when everything else falls away. It's in the way you keep showing up, even when no one asks you to. It's in the way you hold the memories close, refusing to let them be twisted or stolen. She thought she could take it all, my home, my role, even my voice. But what she never understood was that the heart of a grandmother is deeper than any wound, stronger than any lie. It is built on countless small moments, soft lullabies, gentle hands, patient laughter, and no one can take that away. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady beat of my own heart. I knew I wouldn't always be there to protect them from every unkind word, every false story whispered in the dark. But I also knew that the love I'd given them would last long after I was gone. It would live in their laughter, in the way they looked at the world, in the quiet strength I'd shown them when they needed it most. That was my legacy, not the house I'd left behind, or the stories she tried to tell. My legacy was the love that could not be broken, the truth that would always find its way to the light. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly as I watched the stars above the city. My heart was calm, my spirit steady. I had done what I came to do. I had given them all I had, and in the end, that was enough. And if you've ever felt like your voice was lost in someone else's story, remember this: your truth matters. Your love matters. Let me know in the comments what has helped you hold on to your own light, even when the world tries to dim it.